Greetings and welcome everyone. Today I would like to speak to thee about when black metal becomes beautiful, and by that I mean the bands Eldamar and Elderwind. Now recently I listened to 4 albums from those two bands and I just totally was in love with what was listening and the whole experience I had. So today I'm gonna talk about 4 albums, 2 from Eldamar, 2 from Elderwind. So let's get into the video. Well, first I would like to talk about The Force of the Ancient Land by Eldamar. This one was the very first album from this atmospheric sort of symphonic black metal project that I've listened. It comes back to around a year ago. It was the first time I listened to Eldamar, and well, at first I thought that the Force of the Ancient Land was one of my favorite albums of all time, but with some more in-depth listens, it ends out that the other album by Eldamar is actually my favorite one. But let's first of all talk about, well, this one. So, The Force of the Ancient Land is a very optimistic album. It sounds really beautiful, as I said. Today I want to talk about how black metal becomes beautiful when it's being played by the right hands. I would say that this album really is Lord of the Rings music, and it's sort of music made by elves in Rivendell. This is how I picture this whole album, and I believe how the artist behind it also pictures the albums. So the artwork also, let's just talk about the artwork. It's such a beautiful artwork. I love it so much. It's a painting by Albert Burstand, and well, let's talk about what really matters, which is the music. So this album here, it's more of a compilation of songs. The songs are more loose. The album doesn't really depict like a story from beginning to end or anything like that, but there are more like loose songs from within the same fantastical universe or world. I would say that Valkyr, the Ancient One, is like not my favorite song. It's hard to say that because it's more of an interlude, but I love all the sound effects and such from that song. There's no guitars, there's no drumming, it's just like the heavy sound of winds. I believe there's some sounds from the oceans as well in there, and they really love that. There's also the song The Border of Eldamar. Has a beautiful start with calming textures until it gets very, let's say, amazing with the main flavor. It's so amazing, the sound and let's say the textures that you can find within this album and these two artists. Let's go to the next song, which is New Beginning. And well, actually I'm not talking about the songs in any order because I wrote my notes all scrambled. So let's talk about the last song, New Beginning. It ends the album in such a satisfying way. Like when I listen to this album and when I get to a New Beginning and the album ends, it really feels like a satisfying ending. Different, let's say, some other black metal albums such as Mayhem's The Mysteries. That album just suddenly ends, but with this one, with New Beginning, it really feels like this whole album has come to a closing, and this is the music you just experienced. If you want some more, you can play the whole album again or go to the next album. But we still have other songs to talk about in this one. Travel in Woods is a nice little song, a very relaxing song as well. This whole album is very relaxing. I really love the sounds in here. Winter Night mixes heaviness and the evil of black metal with a relaxing and calming intensity that this album and the whole sound from this work has. And let's see here. We also have Spirit of the North. It's the introduction track from Eldamar, 14 minutes long, and it's just the best introduction you could have to this musician. If you know nothing about Eldamar, you just want to get into his beautiful music, beautiful atmospheric symphonic black metal, listen to Spirit of the North. That's the song I would recommend for you. Such a memorable song. That was the first song I listened from this artist, and I fell in love with it. So that would be everything I would have to say about the Force of the Ancient Land. Now I can move on to the next album from Eldamar, which is A Dark Forgotten Past. This album is a little shorter, but as I said, when I first got into this musician, I loved the Force of the Ancient Land, but the more I listened to it more recently, I discovered that A Dark Forgotten Past is the same sound, is the same album, but more compact and more, let's say, straightforward than the previous album. As I said, the Force sounded more like a compilation of loose songs from within the same universe. A Dark Forgotten Past is more like a straightforward story, and we're following the narrative. Well, something you just heard me say, and if you watched some of my other videos, you might be wondering about that, is how I said that these two albums have the same sound. And I'm just gonna say all of these four albums have the same sound, but with Eldamar and Elderwind different to, let's say, Necrophobic, which all of their albums sounded the same. This one, it actually feels like the band's, or well, the artist, Eldamar is a single guy. He really evolved a lot from that album to this one. As I said, this is more of a compact album, straightforward, straight to the point, and you can really hear how the artist evolved a lot between that first album to this one. So it feels more like an evolution of the previous album, but it just kept the same sound. So I also actually see it as a continuation, sort of. No, the first album, loose songs from this fantastical universe. The second album, a straightforward story from it, very set narrative, straightforward to the point. And also the artwork, I think it represents the album really well. I love this artwork more than I love the Force of the Ancient Land. And let's see. Let's talk about the songs now. Return of Darkness, the opening track, is like a better executed version of Spirit of the North. Now, as I said, if you want to know what Eldamar is all about, listen to Spirit of the North. And after you experience that first album, The Force of the Ancient Land, after you listen to it at least once, I would recommend you to go and listen to this one. And Return of Darkness, as I said, is like a better executed version of Spirit of the North. It really sets the whole atmosphere, the fantastical atmosphere of this album, that we're about to follow the story. And Another Journey is the second song, and it is heavy and beautiful at the same time. You can really hear that fantastical, beautiful atmosphere alongside the heaviness and the evilness of black metal. And then we get into the next song, In Search for New Wisdom, which is also very beautiful, and it also has a very unique guitar playing at the very beginning, and that guitar also comes back some other times throughout the album. So I found that song really stood out for me because of that unique guitar that we can find. And then we have A Secret by the Branches, which is a shorter song but also just as good as the other songs we talk about from this album. Ancient Sorcery is another perfect example of the result of mixing together what I just said earlier about the evil sound of black metal together with this magic, fantastical, beautiful sound from this fantastical world we're imagining. As I said earlier as well, song made by elves at Rivendell. So that's really how I see these two albums. And the next song would be The Passing. It's a good song. The vocal, it has a lot of those female vocals that I believe are being actually played on the keyboards, and you could picture it as like an elven maiden singing, and really beautiful. The New Understanding is the song that closes the album, and it's the whole album, you know, just like the previous album, which ended with what's that song? The Beginning. Just like the previous album, which ended with that song that ended the whole thing very well, this album here also ends very well with the song New Understanding. It closes the album in a very satisfying way, and I really enjoyed it. So that's what I would have to say about The Dark Forgotten Past. Beautiful album. Now that I talked about Eldamar and these two albums, I'm gonna move on to Elderwind, and how Elderwind is basically Eldamar but with vocals, actual singing. So let's move to the next two albums. Well, first let's talk about The Colder the Night. Something that really got me interested in Elderwind is the artworks. They really reminded me of Eldamar, you know, this beautiful painting showing this fantastical world that we're about to get into through the sounds, the music we're going to listen. So it is as well very optimistic, very beautiful. And when I'm listening to this, I don't really think of black metal. Normally people see black metal as being that evil sound, every song is about hell and such, but when I'm listening to these bands here, to these albums, I'm not thinking of that at all. As I said, I'm thinking of a fantastical magic world filled with elves and wizards and such, something very you know, fantastical. That's the word, very fantastical. Everything is fantastical here. So as I said, Elderwind is basically Eldamar but with vocals. So now just imagine if those Eldamar songs had someone screaming like the black metal vocals, and then it's basically Elderwind. So it features this album here, it features beautiful sounds of nature, animals, insects and such, and all of those sounds, they really enrichen the experience. You can really feel like you're settled in this very naturalistic, fantastical world. And black metal really stops being evil at this point when you listen to this sort of music, and it just becomes beautiful. So I would say that these albums are very meditative and meditative. How do you pronounce that word? I was saying, these albums, they are very meditative and relaxing to listen to. And well, to close off with The Colder the Night, and before we get into the magic of nature, I would say that my favorite songs in here are Alte with Autumn Magic and The Colder the Night, the title track. So beautiful artwork, beautiful music, just overall beautiful. I really enjoyed this album here. But let's talk about the one that I prefer from Elderwind, the one that I enjoyed more, which is The Magic of Nature. As well, the artwork, I absolutely loved the artwork. Very beautiful, and it sounds pretty much like the other album, as I said with Eldamar as well. These two albums keep the same sound, but they are unique. It's the same sound, but they do different things with, well, the sound, this very fantastical black metal sound. So my favorite songs from this album would be In the Snow, Last Winter Night, and Cold in the Soul. Last Winter Night, my favorite Elderwind song, maybe. Really good song. And well, as I said so many times throughout this whole video, this album here is also so very beautiful. The music doesn't make you think of black metal at all, makes you think of that fantastical world, and this is almost a completely different genre of music. This album is pretty much like the other one. No sound effects, very relaxing, very naturalistic, very fantastical, very calming. So I have nothing else to say. Let's get to the middle. These albums here, they toppled, like the very top, some of my favorite albums I've ever listened. When I first listened to Eldamar, I already loved that sound, but after listening to these 4 albums, comparing Eldamar to Elderwind, I really loved the sound much more than I had before, and it's hard to pick a favorite album out of all of these. I would say that from Elderwind, The Magic of Nature is the one that I like the most, and from Eldamar is A Dark Forgotten Past. But if I had to pick between those two, that would be much harder. I would say A Dark Forgotten Past. Yeah, I think that's the one I love the more. And the one that I would say that I enjoyed the least would be The Force of the Ancient Land. Out of these 4, all of them up there, some of the best albums I've ever listened, not only from metal but from music in general. So I would recommend this 1,000 times to you. If you want to listen to heavy metal but without being heavy, listen to this. These albums are all very much perfect. 10 out of 10 albums. I completely enjoyed my time with them. So leave in the comments your thoughts on Eldamar and Elderwind. Man, I really wanna discover more bands that sound like this, but I have some other music I want to listen to before I can do that. So leave in the comments your thoughts on these 4 albums, your thoughts on Eldamar. Do you prefer Eldamar? Do you prefer Elderwind? Which one of these albums did you like the most? You can leave all of it in the comments. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Until the next time.